Fate doesn't ask for permission. It just comes and changes everything. He was just a maid struggling to eat, sleep, and survive. He was a rich man, living in comfort with a mother who wouldn't rest until he got married. They were from two different worlds. But one rainy night, everything changed. Abuja, Nigeria. Ken dropped his car keys on the table and sat on his big leather couch. He looked out at the city lights from his fancy apartment in Maitama, but his heart felt empty. He had just made millions in a business deal. But no one was there to say, "Well done." No one to hug him. No one to love him. Suddenly his phone rang. It was his mom. Ken sighed. Not again. He picked up. "Good evening, Mama." Her voice was kind but serious. "My son, how are you? I've been praying for you." "I'm fine, Mama. I just got home." Is there anyone there waiting for you?" Ken rolled his eyes. "Mama, please. My son, your cousin Tony, is married with a baby. Even Chucks and Mike have wives. Do you want to be the last?" Ken groaned. "Let's not start, please. If you can't find a wife in Abuja, I will go to our village and find you one. A good girl. Respectful. God-fearing. One that can cook soup. Not these city girls always eating shawarma." Ken laughed. "Mama, you know I can't marry a village girl." "Oh. So who will you marry then?" Ken paused. His voice softened. "There's someone. He's different. I'm just watching her. If she's the right one, I'll go and meet her family." His mother's voice changed. "Watching? Is she a movie?" Ken paused again. "It's not like that, Mama. I want to be sure. Love is not enough. I want peace too." His mother sighed. "You think money brings peace? Sometimes peace is found in simple things. Not everything that shines is gold. Think about it." Round pushpin somewhere far from Ken's world of glass and gold. Grace sat outside her small room on a broken plastic chair. Her hands were dry. Her lips were dry. Her stomach, empty. She held a sachet of water. That was all she had. She hadn't eaten since morning. But she was used to hunger. Life was hard. Grace had no family. He grew up in an orphanage. There she learned one thing. You are on your own. At age 15, she overheard the workers in the orphanage planning to give her away to a man she didn't know. That night she escaped. She ran, and never looked back. Now years later she was still running from life. But she had one thing. Chizzy, her only friend. They lived together in a small room with a leaking roof and mosquitoes everywhere. Suddenly, Chizzy ran out holding her phone. "Grace. Grace. You won't believe this." "What?" Grace asked. "There's a job. A rich man in Asokoro needs a housemaid." Grace's eyes widened. "Asokoro? The real Asokoro?" "Yes. Rich people own cars that look like spaceship. Floors that shine like mirror. Swimming pool inside bathroom." Grace looked down. "Chizzy, people like us don't get jobs like that." Chizzy laughed. "Let them reject you first. But you must try. You deserve better, Grace." Grace looked away. "What if they say I'm not good enough?" Chizzy stepped closer and held her face. "What if they say yes? What if this is your chance? You are clean, humble, and hardworking. Even me, if I was rich, I'd hire you." Grace's eyes filled with tears. The world had always told her she was not enough. But maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. She wiped her face and nodded. "I'll go." Chizzy smiled big. "That's my girl. Tomorrow we enter Asokoro." Grace laughed through her tears. For the first time in years, she had hope. But what she didn't know was that job would change her life forever. Grace didn't talk much that morning. She stood quietly at the bus stop holding her bag tightly. Her face was calm but her eyes looked worried. Chizzy stood beside her, checking the time over and over. When the taxi finally stopped in front of them, Chizzy didn't wait. "Asokoro," she told the driver quickly. They both got in. The door closed behind them. Inside the car it was quiet. Grace looked out of the window watching everything outside change. The small shops turned into big buildings. The bad roads became smooth. The houses got bigger. Everything looked different. Better. Grace didn't say a word. She just held her bag closer and kept watching. When they got to the gate they didn't speak. The gate was tall and black with shiny gold designs. It looked very expensive. A security guard walked up to them. "Yes?" he asked. His face looked tired. He didn't smile. Chizzy got out first. Good morning, sir. We're here for the housekeeping job. The guard looked at them slowly. He didn't look impressed. You, he said. Grace stepped forward. Sir. We saw the job post online. The guard looked at her again, then moved aside. Wait under that tree, he said. Madame Peace is still inside talking to others. They walked in quietly. The house was huge. The compound looked perfect. Everything was clean. There were flowers, a big pool, and even soft music playing from somewhere. Grace didn't say anything. She looked around, then looked down. God, please help me today, she whispered. Inside the house, Ken was upstairs on the balcony holding a cup of tea. He wasn't part of the interviews. His mum was the one handling it. He didn't plan to come downstairs until he heard someone say, Grace is Emma? He looked down and saw her. She stood quietly, looking unsure but not weak. Something about her made him stop and watch. He didn't know why, but he felt something. Without thinking too much, Ken started walking down the stairs. Madame Peace was sitting with a clipboard, flipping through papers. She looked tired. Her eyes barely lifted when she said, Grace is Emma? Grace stepped forward quickly. Yes, Ma. Madame Peace looked at her from head to toe, then at the paper again. It says here you've never worked as a housekeeper before. No, Ma, Grace said softly. But I can learn. I work very hard. You even speak well, Madame Peace said, sounding surprised. Where are you from? Enugu, Ma. Just then they heard footsteps. Everyone turned. Ken was walking down the stairs. Madame Peace stood up quickly. Sir, good morning. Ken didn't respond. He just kept looking at Grace. Then he said calmly, Can I speak with her? Just for 5 minutes. Grace froze. Madame Peace blinked, confused. Sir, she's still being interviewed. Ken looked at her. I know. 5 minutes. Madame Peace stepped aside. Yes, sir. Grace followed him out to the garden. Her heart was beating fast. They stood near some flowers. Grace didn't know what to say. Ken looked at her closely. Not in a rude way, but like he was really trying to understand her. What's your name again? He asked. Grace, she said. Grace is Emma. And you came from Enugu? She nodded. Yes, sir. You look nervous. I am. Why? I've never been in a place like this before. Ken gave a small smile. Well, I've never met someone like you before either. Grace looked down, confused. Sir. He paused for a moment. Then he nodded. You can start tomorrow. Grace's eyes widened. Really? Yes. You'll be helping with laundry in the guest rooms. Do your best. Grace could barely believe it. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. As she turned to leave, he added, and Grace. She looked back. Welcome to Asokoro. She smiled. A real smile. As she walked back into the house, Madame Peace pulled her aside. Let me tell you something, she said in a low voice. Keep your head down. No jokes. No drama. No flirting. This is not a place to look for husband. You're here to work. Grace nodded quickly. Yes, Ma. She didn't say anything more. She just held her bag tighter. She had no idea that behind these beautiful walls, some people already didn't want her there. And someone's mother was watching, ready to do anything to keep her away from her son. But for now, Grace just whispered under her breath, God help me. I don't want to mess this up. Grace woke up before anyone else. No alarm. No reminder. Just her body already used to early mornings. She quietly left the tiny room she shared with 2 other housemaids and walked into the wide, quiet hallway. She began her routine without waiting for instructions. First, she swept the corridors upstairs, making sure to gather every grain of dust. Then she mopped just like Madame Peace had shown her. Figure-8 strokes, not circles. Next, she cleaned the bathroom mirrors until her reflection looked back without a single smear. She arranged the towels. Not just folded, but hotel-style. Madame Peace had made her practice it 5 times the day before. He got it right this time. No one noticed. No one said, well done. But Grace didn't stop. She wasn't here for praise. She just didn't want to mess it up. At 8 a.m. sharp, Madame Peace called her into the laundry room. Did you iron the guest sheets yesterday? She asked without looking up. Yes, Ma. They had lines. You ironed but didn't press. Learn the difference. Yes, Ma. Grace watched carefully as Madame Peace demonstrated. Firm, straight, slow. No wrinkles. No folds. She nodded and memorized it. Later that afternoon she was called to help in the kitchen. Slice these vegetables evenly, the cook told her. And don't rush. Grace sliced slowly, ignoring the pain in her wrist from the long day. When she finished, the cook looked at her work and nodded once. That was the closest she got to a compliment. At night she swept again. Then cleaned the lower windows even though nobody asked. She folded her clothes neatly before bed and lay down quietly, too tired to speak. But her mind wasn't resting. It kept whispering, "Don't mess this up. Just keep going. Don't give them a reason to send you away." The next morning the routine repeated. And the morning after that. And again. One evening she was wiping the chairs in the main living room when she heard someone enter. She turned slightly and saw Ken standing by the door. She quickly faced her work again. He walked past without a word. But she could feel his eyes pause on her. She said nothing. No smiles. No eye contact. Just work. In the hallway that night, Madame Peace caught her wiping the staircase railings. Something nobody had told her to do. "You're not trying to impress anybody, are you?" "No, Ma," Grace answered softly. "I just want to do things right." Madame Peace watched her for a moment, then nodded slowly and walked away. That night Grace lay in bed and whispered, "God, I don't want anything else. Just let me keep this job." She had no idea that somewhere in the house, a decision was already being made. One that had nothing to do with her work. One that might send her away whether she worked hard or not. But for now, Grace was still trying. And that was all she knew how to do. Grace sat quietly in the garden, her broom resting against the tree. She had finished sweeping just as Madame Peace told her. But she didn't go in yet. She needed a moment. The sky was too quiet and the air felt heavy, like it already knew what she was about to hear. She looked around the compound, so clean, so perfect, so far from everything she had ever known. She had done her best. She woke up earlier than everyone else. She scrubbed the guest bathroom until the tiles sparkled. She folded the towels exactly how Madame Peace showed her. Edges tight, no creases. She even started learning the flower names in the garden so she could care for them better. No one praised her. No one smiled. But she kept going. Because this job, it meant more than money. It was her only shot at changing her life. Now it was slipping. She stood up slowly and walked into the house. The hallway felt colder than usual. Madame Peace was waiting by the door to the laundry room, arms folded. "Come," she said. Grace followed her. They stepped inside. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Madame Peace didn't look angry. She looked uncomfortable. Like she was carrying a message she didn't want to deliver. Grace stood, hands behind her back, trying not to tremble. Finally Madame Peace sighed. "Grace, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. But, you won't be needed here anymore." The words dropped hard. Grace blinked. "Ma, it's not about your work. Your work is fine. But Madame Evelyn, she doesn't want you here anymore." Grace's voice shook. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Madame Peace said softly. "That's the hard part. You didn't." Grace felt the back of her knees weaken. She gripped the edge of the table beside her. Madame Peace avoided her eyes. "You'll be paid for 2 weeks. I've packed some groceries for you too." Grace didn't move. Her mind was spinning. Not with anger, but with questions that had no answers. "Can I speak to her?" she asked. Madame Peace shook her head. "I don't think that's a good idea." Grace nodded slowly. Her throat felt tight. She left the room and walked back outside, her legs numb. She sat under the same tree where she had waited on the first day. Where hope had filled her chest like fresh air. Now it was all gone. She looked at her hands. They were tired. They were clean. They had worked hard. And still, she was being sent away. She thought of the orphanage. Of the small bed she used to sleep in with a thin blanket. Of Sister Annuli, the one person who ever told her she was special. She remembered the quiet promise she made to herself the day she left that place. Make this one count. Don't come back empty. Now she felt like she had failed. Not because of something she did. But because someone somewhere in that big house had decided she didn't belong. Even though she had done everything right. He picked up her small bag. No one came to say goodbye. Not Madame Peace. Not even him. She walked to the gate. The same guard opened it without a word. Outside the sun was hot, but she felt cold inside. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just walked down the road step by step, leaving behind the mansion, the chance, the quiet dreams she didn't even say out loud. But she didn't know that just behind one of those tall windows upstairs, Ken was watching, and he looked like a man who had just realized something too late. Ken stood behind the window staring at the closed gate. He had seen her walk out alone. No car, no driver, just a girl with a small bag and no goodbye. She was gone. And he didn't stop her. He wanted to, but everything happened too fast. He had heard raised voices earlier. His mother's tone. Madame Peace's silence. Then quiet footsteps, and Grace walking away. He didn't know why it hurt. She was just a maid. That's what he kept telling himself. But the truth was, he noticed her before anyone else did. The way she worked with her head down. The way she tried not to take up space. Like someone afraid that life would punish her for being seen. And that made her unforgettable. He left the window and went downstairs. The house felt louder somehow. Voices, footsteps, clinking dishes. Everything normal. But not. He found Madame Peace in the kitchen. "She's gone?" he asked. Madame Peace turned. She had expected this. Yes. Why? She didn't do anything wrong. He looked at her hard. Then why is she gone? Madame Peace hesitated. Then she said it quietly. "Your mother didn't want her here." Ken didn't speak. He just nodded once and walked away. Upstairs he entered his room and shut the door. The silence hit him. He picked up his phone and opened the house CCTV app. He rewound the footage, paused on the frame that showed her at the gate. She had looked back once. Just once. Maybe hoping someone would stop her. He closed the app. Meanwhile, Grace was sitting in a small Kiki Napep, her bag beside her. The driver's loud music didn't bother her. Nothing did. She just stared ahead, watching the roads go by. The mansions faded into streets. Streets into kiosks. Then shops. Then nothing but dust and traffic. She didn't know where to go. She had no family. No home. Only Chizzy. She pressed her phone. It rang twice. "Babe." Chizzy's voice came on cheerfully. But Grace's silence said it all. "Grace. They sent me away," she said softly. Just like that. There was a pause. Then Chizzy's voice dropped. "What happened?" "Nothing. I swear. Madame Peace said I didn't do anything wrong." Chizzy hissed. "It's that his mother, I'm telling you. She's wicked. She probably saw how Ken was looking at you." Grace's throat tightened. "Stop. I'm serious. I warned you. These people, they don't want their sons mixing with girls like us." Grace closed her eyes. "I didn't do anything." "I know." Silence passed between them. Then Chizzy said, "Come to my place. Stay here till you figure things out." Grace nodded even though Chizzy couldn't see her. By evening, Grace was in Chizzy's small one-room apartment. The ceiling fan shook as it spun. The mattress on the floor was thin, but it was home for now. Chizzy gave her food. But Grace barely touched it. "You need to rest," Chizzy said. "You've been through too much." Grace lay on her side, hugging her bag like a pillow. She closed her eyes and whispered, "God, what now?" That same night, Ken sat on his bed, restless. The guilt wouldn't let him breathe. So he did something he had never done before. He searched her name online. Grace Azima. Nothing. Then he checked the application records Madame Peace had compiled when they first interviewed the girls. Grace had listed a former orphanage as her last address. He copied the name. Typed it in. There was Hope Springs Orphanage, Etiko. He stared at the screen. Then he picked up his car keys. And drove. Ken parked just outside the old iron gate. The sign above it read, Hope Springs Orphanage. The building looked tired. Like it had been through too many rainy seasons and not enough repairs. He stepped out of the car. A group of kids played with a worn-out ball near the entrance. One of them stopped, eyed him with curiosity, then ran inside. Moments later, a woman in a long brown gown came to the door. Tired eyes. But kind. "Good evening," she said, adjusting her scarf. "Can I help you?" Ken nodded, a little unsure now that he was here. "I'm looking for someone. Grace Azima. I believe she lived here." The woman's expression changed slightly. Not surprise, just something deeper. "You're not the first person to ask about Grace lately," she said. Ken stepped closer. So she was here? The woman nodded and pushed the door open wider. Come in. My name is Sister Justina. Ken sat down. Sister Justina remained standing. Grace was one of ours, she began. Came here as a baby. No records. No trace of family. Nothing. Ken listened, trying not to look too eager. She was quiet. Always observing. Never caused trouble. She stayed here until she turned 18. Then she left. Where did she go? She worked in a church for a while. Then disappeared. We only saw her again recently, when she came to drop off some clothes and money for the younger girls. Even when she had little, she still gave. Ken looked down. That sounded like the Grace he knew. She's had a hard life, Sister Justina added. But she's strong. There was a pause. Then Ken asked the one thing he'd been holding in his chest. Did she ever talk about love? About wanting more? The woman smiled gently. She didn't talk much. But I remember once, she told me, if I ever fall for someone, I want to fall fully. With no shame. No fear. Even if it breaks me. Ken felt something tighten in his chest. I think, the woman continued, she's just waiting for someone to see her for who she really is. Not where she came from. He stood up slowly. Thank you. As he reached the door, Sister Justina added one more thing. If you care about her, find her before life hardens her heart. Ken paused. Then gave a small nod and walked back to his car. The night air was cold, but he didn't feel it. He was already dialing a number. One he got from the orphanage records. Hello. Grace's voice. Soft. Guarded. He didn't know what to say at first. But then he found the words. It's me. Ken. There was a pause. Then, why are you calling me? He looked at the sky full of stars. Because I should have stopped you. And I didn't. I let them push you out. Silence. Then Grace whispered, what do you want? Ken closed his eyes. To see you again. Grace didn't reply. But she didn't hang up either. And sometimes that's where something real begins. Right in the silence. Silence. Then Grace whispered, what do you want? Ken closed his eyes. To see you again. She didn't say anything. Didn't hang up either. But before either of them could speak again, a loud knock came at Grace's door. She jumped. Hold on. Someone's at the door. Grace, wait. She hung up. Outside, Chizzy stood holding Grace's phone charger. I think you should come downstairs, she said, breathless. Something is happening. Grace's heart was still racing from the call. What do you mean? Just come. Don't ask. Come. Grace followed barefoot, confused. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, she heard voices. Low, serious. In the living room stood Chizzy's older brother, Keen, talking in hushed tones with someone Grace didn't recognize. A tall, calm-looking man in a gray suit. He held a folder. The air changed when Grace entered. Keen looked at her. Grace. This man is looking for you. The man turned slowly. He wasn't from Evelyn and Company. His badge read, Child Welfare Services. Grace froze. The man offered a kind smile. I'm here because of your file. My file? Grace said, heart pounding. What file? The man stepped forward. We've been going over orphanage archives. There were some irregularities, some missing pages. But one of our staff found something recently. Something that belongs to you. Grace blinked, her throat dry. I don't understand. The man opened the folder and pulled out a creased envelope, sealed and yellowing at the edges. This was found tucked into an old book from Hope Springs Orphanage. It was labeled for Grace when the time is right. It was written 20 years ago. Grace covered her mouth, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. I was told I was abandoned. There was nothing. The man's voice was gentle. That's what they believed. But someone left this. He handed it to her. Grace's hands trembled as she held it. I'll leave you to open it in peace, he said, nodding once before leaving the house quietly. The room was silent. Chizzy and Keen said nothing. They just stood beside her. With her heart beating like a drum, Grace opened the envelope. Inside was a folded letter and a tiny photograph. She unfolded the note, eyes scanning the faded handwriting. To my daughter, Grace. If this ever reaches you, I pray the world has been kind. I wanted you more than anything. But I was young, scared, and threatened by people more powerful than I could fight. You were taken from me. I've looked for you every day since. You have my eyes, they say. And my stubbornness. I hope you still smile in your sleep like you did as a baby. I never stopped loving you. Emmy. Grace couldn't breathe. Her knees gave way. She sank slowly to the floor. Chizzy rushed to hold her. Emdaddy, she whispered. No, it can't be. Chizzy held up the photo. It was blurry but clear enough. A young woman smiling at a baby in her arms. Grace stared. And recognized the face instantly. She had only ever seen it once before in the dining room, on a framed photo in Ken's house. The woman was Madame Evelyn. Chizzy gasped. Wait. Are you saying? I think, Grace's voice cracked. She's my mother. The room fell still. No one spoke. Not even when Grace began to cry. Not quiet tears, but the kind that come from years of wondering, hoping, being told you were nothing, only to find out you were someone all along. And upstairs her phone lit up. Ken had texted. I don't know what happened just now. But I'm still here. I'm not leaving. Grace didn't reply. She just stared at the photo of the woman who had once pushed her out, and now might be the one who gave birth to her.